Hi, welcome to my first ever Slormancer video. So this video is going to be showcasing the knight build that I've been developing, which is the Elder Lens build that basically revolves around proccing Astral Retribution. So just to go over the skills real quick, I took the Yellow Ascension mainly because it's the Ascension that has the most upgrades to Astral Retribution. So basically just increase more damage and then also triggering more proc chances for both the Sword and the Meteor. And we're also trying to boost our luck as much as possible. So this is all the skills that I took for the Ascension. And for the Elder Lens, the way that this build works is that you would proc Astral Retribution for every time Training Lens hits an enemy. And then Align the Stars basically also boosts the damage. So every time you cast this skill, it increases the damage of Astral Retribution by 1%. And this stack doesn't really have a duration, so it only resets whenever you exit the map. So whenever you're doing a forge, for example, until wave 100, this can easily reach more than 1,000 stacks. So it really increased the damage a lot. So just going back to the skill, it's also important to make Elder Lens as a fast skill, mainly because you want to spam Elder Lens as much as possible. So for the fourth tier, I put ready for skewing, mainly for the extra damage. So especially when, I guess like the one that triggers the skewing is also a meteor, it also helps with the additional damage. And then for the fifth tier, I just put World Tour so that the big lens can rotate twice on the map basically and just hits more enemy in general. Now, in terms of the second skills that I took, I just took Crash Shield mainly for the defensive passive skill it has. It doesn't really matter which one you take, to be honest. You can take Grappling Hook as an alternative if you prefer that. But I just took basically the passive 15 stack block chance minimum, and then just having a nice one block stack per second just for extra survivability. So in terms of the attributes, I think if you're just starting out or if you're copying the build for the first time, I would just recommend maxing Savagery. So just like this tree in particular really boosts your damage. So this is how you can scale your damage from the early to mid game. So you can see that currently I have about 45,000, but if I just unspec all of this, ignoring this, I still have about 28,000. So that's almost a 20k drop off if I don't spec Savagery at all. So I would highly recommend chasing Savagery first. And once this is done, you can try to get some points in toughness until rank 15. So you can get some elemental resistance from your armor, which really boosts your survivability. And then once you have the extra points, you can either put at dexterity or bravery, depending on preference. I just put bravery mainly because of the extra movement speed, and I think it's just more of a comfort pick. But if you want more damage, you can also pick dexterity. So in terms of the gear, there isn't any required legendary to make this build work, but if you have, I guess like extra of these legendary storm line, I would definitely try my best to re-roll for the helmet. So the helmet here basically just gives another chance to proc Astral Retribution. So from the skill previously, you have about 10% chance every time training lens hits an enemy, but this one also basically have another chance to proc Astral Retribution by just casting the lens. So you have basically two ways of proccing Elder Lens, and this legendary does boost your damage, but it's not really necessary to make the build work because I just recently got this, and I was still leveling up my characters just fine without this legendary. So here are all the quick stat rundown for all my gear. I'll go over on like what kind of gear you should try to highlight and what kind of stats you should try to find on your gear after this. Yeah, and I guess in terms of the gear that you're trying to look for, or like the stats, max life is always nice to have. It just sort of like prevents you from getting one-shotted by enemies because some enemies can deal up to like 5 to 6k damage in one hit. Life leech and mana leech are the two main ways for you to sustain in this build, especially since we're releasing quite a lot of projectiles. It just sort of like keeps your health and mana like 100% basically every time you deal damage. Movement is always nice just to so you can clear map a bit faster, and it's also very useful on towers as well. Attack speed is also the main way for you to spam skills. Since Elder Lens becomes a fast skill, attack speed is the only way to sort of like make you shoot faster, right? And since this is a full physical build, raw damage is the main way to scale. So make sure you can get raw damage for all of your gears. So both the percentage and also the raw number itself. Critical chance and astral strike chance also nice to have. Just really boost your damage even further. Damage to elites is also very nice. And I guess armor and elemental resistance are like the two main ways for you to skill your defense and boost your survivability. But I guess like the three main stats that really make this build work or like scale a lot harder are these three projectiles. So pierce, fork, and rebound. So the way that this works is that pierce. So again, every time a projectile hits an enemy, it doesn't end and it just goes through all the enemies. So you really want to try to max this to 100% or close to 100% whenever possible. And fork is that every time when a projectile hits an enemy, it's split into two. And then rebound is also when whenever the projectile hits a wall, it also bounces back. So you can really see the combo. For example, like for just one arrow, right? It pierces to multiple enemies, and every time it pierces, it forks as well. And then even after all the fork and pierce projectile hits all the enemies, it can still rebound and hit the same enemy twice, right? And this is the reason why we take the Drum Primordial Sword of War. This is a very, very good weapon for this build, mainly for the Pierce and Fork chance multiplier. So it's a lot easier to reach higher numbers for the Pierce and Fork. But I guess the main advantage of using this sword is also the additional projectile. So instead of just like shooting one elder lance at a time, you can shoot multiple. And I think like if you have all the stacks, you can shoot up to like 10 arrows, and then each of those arrows will still pierce and fork. And then every time those training lance hits an enemy, right, from your skill, it has a chance to proc Astral Retribution. But also from the helmet, you also have an additional chance to proc Astral Retribution. So basically, what would happen is that every time you shoot, you basically also trigger 10 to 20 swords from Astral Retribution. And if you have about 100% luck, you also trigger Astral Meteor, right? And I guess like the main big damage of this build is whenever you have 100% luck. So again, the way that this triggers is that if you have 100% luck, so whenever your cast is perfect, you trigger you have a 100% chance to trigger, and then that trigger is going to be a meteor. So you can imagine that when every time a training lance hits an enemy and then it pierces and it forks, and you have when you shoot 10 projectiles, 20 projectiles, 30 projectiles, you have a chance to shoot 20 to 30 meteors, and then that meteors also have a chance to trigger again, right? So this is like the big wave clearing. So every time you build up your luck to 100%, and this is the reason why we also try to scale our luck as high as possible, but also have a 20% chance to keep the luck every time you cast a perfect cast, right? So that's really the way that this build works. And in terms of Ancestral Legacy, I guess like the route you should take is this one. So this one just really boosts your survivability, reduces the attacks by the enemy. It's always really nice to have. More raw damage, so it really scales your damage even further. This one is nice to have because it also helps with the pierce chance, but also the projectile and armor penetration is also nice. I would skip this one. This one doesn't really do anything for the build. Critical chance and ancestral strike chance is always nice to have. And then again, fork chance and rebound chance is what you're looking for, and damage to elites also really nice. And then for the last one, overkill damage is always nice because I think if you look at the skill, for example, right? So I currently only have like 19 stack of cosmic, but then when you're doing forge, you can have like up to like 1,200. So the damage for the meteor can be quite high. So for right now, for example, like one meteor deals about 500,000 damage. But then again, there's gonna be like 20 meteors spamming all at once. And then once you have enough stack, each meteor can actually reach 5 to 10 million damage. And then I can basically I think whenever I'm at the wave 90 plus at Forge, I can melt 10 million HP bosses in about 1 or 2 seconds. So I guess like the overkill damage does help spread out the damage every time you, I guess like the damage overkills, right? And then for the last Astral, once you unlock the green stone, I guess I just put again more raw damage just to scale. So yeah, I guess that's just a quick rundown on how the build works. I guess like before I forgot, just take any runes of your choice. So since I'm sort of like farming forge, I just took this combination of runes. So this one just multiplies your damage even further, and I can have the activate effect rune, so I can trigger whenever I want. So yeah, I guess that's it really for the build. I hope you guys do enjoy it. So, I do plan on making more future builds for knights. I do have other weapons planned for the next build, and I think what one thing that's quite interesting is the Sword of Alpha and Omega. So this might be my next build if you guys are interested. But thank you so much for tuning in.